Hello and welcome to Moderate Fantasy Violence, a podcast about pop culture and the world around it. I'm Alistair.
And I'm Nick.
And in today's episode, we'll be fighting off evil from our new bar in Jim Crow-era America in Sinners, then briefly exploring a range of sci-fi settings in Love, Death and Robots, Volume 4. But before all of that, Nick, do you have something to recommend to our listeners?
Yes, I do. It's something I've been watching for a few months, actually, and I thought I would finally talk about it on the podcast, mostly because, for various reasons, it's been one of the main bits of media I've consumed in the last couple of weeks, other than things that we intend to cover separately on the podcast. So yeah, I've been watching Homicide, Life on the Streets, the police procedural series that ran throughout the 90s, a show run by Tom Fontana and based on the lengthy journalism book by The Wire creator David Simon back in his pre-TV journalism days. And this isn't actually a David Simon show, although it is where he got his start writing a few episodes and generally getting to know the TV industry before making his show-running debut with The Wire. So yeah, the premise of Homicide Life on the Street is fundamentally, rather than trying to be some sort of towering treatise on the nature of Baltimore, it's merely about the homicide department in Baltimore trying to deal with the famously large number of murders they have there. And the premise of Homicide, I think, compared to other cop shows, is that it does tend to focus a bit more on the idea that it's just a job, and it's more about the day-to-day life of the detectives and how they navigate the internal politics and their interpersonal struggles and the bureaucracy and so on to get the job done, and much less so the specific tragedy of every individual victim. A few times a season they have an episode where they focus a bit more on the victims to remind you that murder is sad, but a lot of the time it's just the detectives going about their jobs, showing you a bit of the process and indulging in a bit of the old gallows humour.
So this is structured around, one murder an episode that they're trying to solve? In a sort of classic procedural case of the week style?
Well, no, not really, because, as I say, because they don't really focus that heavily on the details of, like, the individual cases, or even the twists and turns of the individual cases, then just one murder wouldn't necessarily fill a whole episode. There's often at least two, if not a few more.
All right, okay. So we're talking about like a wide cast of characters investigating, quite a few plot lines.
Yeah, there's about 6 detectives usually in three pairs. They have partners. Plus there's their boss, their lieutenants, and occasionally some other regular characters as well. So you have these 6 detectives, which often means basically there's 2 or 3 murders ongoing in each individual episode for each set of pairs.
It sounds like quite a lot, yeah. And then have the 6 or so core detectives remain stable across the 4 years, or has there been changes to the cast in that time?
There's been reliable changes. A couple of detectives have just vanished between seasons 3 and 4. Which was strange. I think they just didn't renew their contracts. Again, I think because it's kind of about the job of being detectives and the psychic toll it takes dealing with so much murder and so much death, it doesn't get quite as invested in the individual specific lives of individual detectives, so it can just sort of brush over it when they leave to an extent.
Yeah, and that was more common back in the day. Actors just vanishing between seasons in shows like this, or sometimes characters just being recast. I mean, this show, I guess it's got sort of a kind of a cult status as one of those really good crime shows that I guess never quite reached the kind of the heights of things like, I don't know, CSI or NCIS that seem to, as well as run for ages, I guess become extremely popular and part of the national TV-based conversation.
Yeah, it's, I guess, running in sort of the same system as them, but I guess it was more the critically acclaimed cult hits one rather than the really, really popular one. Because, yeah, I think it was generally quite beloved and I think is now known for being quite influential. But it was not as popular as things like Law and Order that were running at the same time.
Yeah, but I guess there's a lot of procedural crime shows made. Most of them are being completely forgotten. That obviously Law and Order became very famous, but I guess the fact that this one has endured, is it largely because of the quality of the writing, the storytelling, or the caliber of the creatives involved?
I guess so. I think it's a combination of, the writing and the cast, and just the fact that it does have a sort of a unique style and a willingness to just let the actors freewheel around a bit, and it's got a very sort of loose handhold camera style. It's not very cinematic. It doesn't make big images and build up to dramatic shots of the cops taking their sunglasses off or whatever. It's very semi-documentary in its approach.
I guess they're aiming at realism rather than something that's sensational.
Well, yeah, like I say, it's the idea of in reality these jobs are a bit shit, and to put that across, we require realism. And yeah, it's got some great actors as well. There's Daniel Baldwin, Ned Beatty, Melissa Leo, who I think has gone on to win an Oscar and be in a couple of other David Simon shows. A lot of actors, a lot of whom are, again, known for being good, but haven't necessarily become huge A-list famous.
Yeah, and I suppose obviously they're known for this, and obviously, yeah, it's more than many actors get as like, a recurring part on like a popular show. Yeah, it sounds like, there's quite a lot of famous people. Yeah, Melissa Leo, that sounds familiar. I'm trying to remember, what did she win her Oscar for?
I looked it up at some point, but I can't remember. But yeah, she won an Oscar at some stage in the last few years for a role of some kind, which I will no doubt be able to tell you in a few seconds as I vamp while I Google it.
She's in Prisoners, which is a great film.
Several awards for her performance in The Fighter, including Best Supporting Actress.
Oh yeah, that's not a film I've seen from 2010. She's in Prisoners, which is a early Denis Villeneuve film, which is really, really good, and obviously the Equalizer films, which are another instance in the friendly neighborhood sociopath subgenre.
She is prolific. She's doing a lot of work up to this very day. And yeah, I think she's in the first 5 seasons of this or something, and she's very good actually. She has a very strange, slightly weird, offbeat energy. She's one of these characters who you never quite know how she's going to react to anything, but it's always very interesting and compelling, and despite being very random, somehow very consistent. She's a good character. I will miss her when she leaves, but that's not for a couple of seasons.
Yeah, and you said that one of the cast members has the record for playing the same character in the most number of episodes or the longest number of seasons or something like that.
Yeah, that's Richard Belzer, who plays Detective John Munch, who I think at some point became some sort of iconic TV detective character who seems to have appeared in a lot of different shows. Primarily, he was in all 7 seasons of Homicide, and then he went on to appear in the first 15 seasons, yes, 15, of Law & Order Special Victims Unit.
God, they made loads of that show. I mean, it's always on, but 15 seasons at least. Wow.
I think they're up to about season 22 or something now. And yeah, he's also appeared in various crossovers with Law & Order, other shows. Plus, apparently he was, obviously I'm just looking at Wikipedia at this point, he was in Arrested Development for 1 episode, he was in The X-Files, he was in The Wire, he was in 2 episodes of 30 Rock. Yeah, the character gets around.
Yeah, what I've seen Arrested Development, it must have been one of those nods they do to American TV shows that went over my head when I saw Arrested Development, I suppose. This is more of an American cult thing.
Yeah, apparently he has physically appeared on 10 different series as John Munch, which is some kind of record. So there we go.
That's an interesting fact. Well, I think it's an interesting fact.
It's a fact. And John Munch is an interesting character. He's sort of the slightly weird, rambly, quirky one who has this sort of occasionally alluded to past as a stoner. So, yeah, I can see why they might want to keep him on. He's a fun character. Part of me does wonder how this character translates into the Law & Order spin-off about sex crimes, but I don't know if I'm going to watch it to find out.
Yeah, that does sound quite tonally different. But I suppose they're still both shows aimed at sort of gritty realism in the world of police looking into crime.
Well, yeah, but as I say, Homicide: Life on the Street tends to focus more on the cops as people rather than the sadness of the crimes. So you could have Munch sort of goofing around a bit, just as like one would in the workplace. Whereas I feel like Special Victims Unit probably has to take its crimes a bit more seriously. Yeah.
Well, I suppose characters change and evolve over time.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe one day I'll watch a couple of episodes just to see what happens, or maybe not.
Yeah. So yeah, you've done 4 seasons, and then you've got several to go.
Yeah, 3 more seasons. Yeah, despite the fact that it was more of a cult hit and seemed to be forever on the edge of cancellation, it did still run for 130 episodes or something. So might be a while this one. I'll be back when I finish.
I mean, people say that commissioning editors or budget holders were more forgiving back in the day and will allow things to continue rather than so in the incredibly cutthroat world of today's TV when things get cancelled at the drop of a hat. Or sometimes, on ridiculous cliffhangers, and even if the show's popular. I don't know to what degree that's true. Maybe people are just looking back with rose-tinted glasses, but I'm glad that this managed to run for 7 seasons. I guess probably its critical acclaim is what helped it going if it's more of a prestige show for the network than something aimed at mainstream popularity.
Yeah, I think the critical acclaim probably helps. And, it's having a small resurgence now because they have finally put it up on streaming services, I think, within the last year or so after it being entirely absent from them for the rest of the age of streaming. So you can now watch it in Britain, I think you can watch it on Sky or Now TV, if you so wish, if you wish to join me in this massive folly.
Fair enough. Well, keep us posted as you watch the remaining seasons.
I will be back, I'm sure. Anyway, so yes, that's me, Constant Homicide. Alistair, What have you been up to?
Well, speaking of epic series, I went to the conclusion of one epic series of films, a franchise that's close to my heart. So I've seen Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, which is billed as the last Mission Impossible movie. It's got final in the title, so that should give it away. Yeah, and it's the sort of, the wrap up to this series of 8 films, as well as being, the part 2 to the part 1 of the previous film, which was Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, picking up pretty much exactly where the previous one left off. And I would say about Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, it's very much the Avengers Endgame of the franchise. It's full of little nods to the other films. They bring back various characters. The guy from the Black Vault in the first film is brought back. They reveal what the rabbit's foot actually was from Mission Impossible 3. There's little nods like that. Yeah, and it's filled with these nods and little moments of them taking their kind of victory lap, I guess, with their final film. But that said, it's still, really entertaining film. Say we will about Tom Cruise. He knows how to do entertaining epic action that looks good on the big screen. There's some impressive chases and fight sequences in this. There's especially the climactic one, which Tom Cruise hangs from a biplane as it chases another biplane. That's the sort of classic Mission Impossible moment. There's an underwater scene involving diving and race against time. That's very atmospheric and high pressure. So maybe not the best of the franchise. In fact, certainly not the best of the franchise. There's definitely other better Mission Impossible movies, but it ends on a good note, and it's nice to see them kind of wrap up their story and kind of take a bow and gracefully exit the stage rather than trailing off into a series of films that just get crapper and crapper till no one cares anymore.
Yep, obviously I know this is a series close to your heart. I believe you wrote a small novella about it for our website at some stage.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm glad they went out on some kind of a high with, most of the cast still present and the main, or seems like the primary director of the franchise at this point still going. But I'm glad it ended well for you.
Yeah. So this one's definitely for the fans. Really, obviously, it would make absolutely no sense if you've not seen the previous one, and probably pretty much all the previous films due to the little nods and things like that are going on. But it's still an entertaining film, and and overall it balances out to be a pretty entertaining franchise. Actually, I'll go further and say very entertaining franchise. Pretty consistent in the quality. There aren't many franchises that run to 8 films without there being any turkeys. Mission Impossible 2 is probably the weakest because it's just a sort of fairly hollow, bombastic, loud action movie. All the others have got something interesting going on about them, and they're all just, very entertaining. They don't quite descend into like pure silliness or ridiculousness, although they don't take themselves so seriously that it's just co-faced action. They do form a pretty strong 8-film set, and I wrote my long read which is on the website if you want to look at it, on summarising, my thoughts on the first 6. And I'll do an addendum at some point to include the final 2. So overall, pretty good franchise.
Yeah, no, this does seem to be the action franchise it's still okay to like. As everyone gets sick of the MCU or whatever, there's still this vague consensus that the Mission Impossible franchise, it's just good, clean fun, isn't it? It's just good, solid action. Solid cinematic cinema.
Yeah, exactly. It's Tom Cruise. He makes big films for the cinema. Recently the only things he's done are sequels to mega franchise that he's in charge of, mainly Mission Impossible movies and a Top Gun sequel. And even the Top Gun sequel, I rolled my eyes when they announced that. But I shouldn't have been so quick to judge because, funnily enough, it's an exciting action movie with chases and jets and, kind of action. Yeah, it's pure propaganda for the US military, but it is nonetheless an entertaining film. And sometimes when you sit through a film such as, say, Captain America Brave New World, a film that was kind of a bit too po-faced, had a few action scenes but kind of really lacked soul or a sense of fun, it leads you to believe that franchise can just make these films that are just not particularly good, and you kind of think sort of what's the point. But Tom Cruise does have his eye on this will be an epic, amazing experience in the cinema. This isn't a film that's made to be watched on your phone as you commute, on your tablet as you also scroll social media, something like that. It's made for phones away, immersive, big screen experience. I kind of wish I paid to see it in IMAX because that would have been an even bigger screen experience.
Yeah, no, I'm not as up with these as you are, but I have seen a couple of them and they are always fun. Tom Cruise, as you say, can, if nothing else, definitely headline an action film. And it is impressive he's managed to keep them going and keep them kind of, I don't know, I guess keep them roughly consistent without them also becoming rubbish or boring. Like he hasn't, got off the deep end and sent them into space or something like they apparently have with the Fast and Furious now.
Yeah.
There's apparently a consistency of tone, and yet they're still good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Fast and Furious films just get more and more ridiculous. I mean, kind of ridiculous has become their tone when they started as a very po-faced film about like street races and crime and cops going undercover, but then going native or immersed in the world that they're in. And it was kind of supposed to be something you're supposed to take seriously. And even by the second film, they were like landing cars on top of boats. Yeah, and by the ninth one, they're going into space. So this has remained core to the your Mission Impossible blueprint. Every film is based around Tom Cruise doing some kind of ridiculous stunt, is kind of how it's sold. And then there's a sort of interesting espionage plot thrown in. Each time, they always find some way to say something about the world. The last two, not particularly sophisticated explorations of our fears about technology, as the villain in this film, the previous one, is the Entity, described as something like a self-aware, truth-eating digital parasite.
Truth-eating?
Yeah, well, and it corrupts any data it comes into contact with. So, for example, it will infest news websites and change all the news stories to reflect its agenda. It will delete people from security footage and records so that they no longer exist, and things like that. Yeah, you can't tell what's real anymore online because the Entity is forever manipulating it. That's the idea. I mean, I guess it's our fears of either rogue states kind of using digital propaganda machines or an AI that basically, could manipulate us through social media and control of the internet. It's not particularly subtle. It's basically, what if AI gets out of hand? Apparently, the first film did motivate Joe Biden to take the dangers of AI more seriously and to press for AI legislation, which I guess on some level shows the intellectual level that Joe Biden works on, in that Mission Impossible is what communicated most effectively to him. But we'll just park that for a second. This film also has a plot line about, the world's nuclear powers are being manipulated by the Entity into launching a massive global nuclear Armageddon so that the Entity is the only thing left alive. Yeah, I guess it's playing on our fears of nuclear conflict between East and West. It's playing on our fears of AI and information technology and digital manipulation. So even though it's not a particularly sophisticated or intelligent points it has to make on these topics, the fact that it's tapping into these broader themes in society makes it feels like it has something to say that's a bit more relevant than a Fast and Furious film, which is ultimately about driving cars quickly and then doing crazy stunts with them. There's not really anything more to it than that. And then occasional mention of family. That's their theme. They're sticking to it.
And Mission Impossible got to actually finish their series, and Fast and Furious seems to have stalled out, so I guess he wins.
Yeah.
If indeed it is a competition.
Well, it's good that this got wrapped up. It's very much, on some level, feels like a film from an older time. I know when people say something feels like a film from an older time, they think, they mean the 50s or 60s. When I say these feel like a film from an older time, I mean the 90s. Kind of,
the distant past.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, obviously there are probably mega fans of this franchise who weren't born when Mission Impossible came out. The original, I think I was 10 when I went to see it in the cinema. So, that's fair enough. There's probably people in these films, who weren't born when the first one came out. But they're kind of a slice of 90s fun. Tom Cruise is very much the auteur of these. It's his brand. He produced the original film. He, I think, was fundamental in getting the rights and, getting it made. He's the kind of creative sort of driving force behind it. Now that it's come to an end, I don't know, maybe I could conceivably see him not appearing in any more films, or at least stepping back and only maybe doing a prestige picture if it came along. He was, like 62, he's probably around the age. He's probably starting to think he's possibly too old to be hanging off airplanes and doing, his own stunts and parachute jumps and things like that. I could see him taking a step back, producing more, maybe directing, not really wanting to be the face of films. He's not really someone in the limelight. The press tour from this has focused much more on the supporting actors. I haven't seen much press with Tom Cruise himself in, so maybe this is his swan song to, I don't know, show business, or at least publicly starring and being the sort of the face of these blockbusters.
Yeah, I don't know. I often end up hoping with these things that it actually is an ending and they don't decide to do another one in 5 years' time because they could use some money. But I don't know. Tom Cruise probably has enough money, but he can probably afford to walk away if his principals tell him he actually should walk away.
Yeah, exactly. I guess he, through his Skydance production company, owns these rights, probably, so they probably can't make more of these without his say-so, but I don't know. That's kind of difficult to say. I don't really have much insight into kind of the behind the scenes and the business of it. But they are definitely billing this as this is the end. It's a big arc. This is the thrilling conclusion. And obviously, with all the nods to the previous films, it definitely gives it this tone of this is our victory lap. This is our bow before we gracefully walk off stage and leave it to, whatever franchise is next. More Superman, I guess.
I wouldn't be entirely surprised if we get Mission Impossible: The Next Generation in 5 years' time, with different actors playing the main parts and Tom Cruise producing or maybe cameoing or something.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's just a never-ending quest to mine absolutely everything for IP, and this is now a valuable IP, or at least it's one that's been kept in the consciousness by, these films have been made, although they're very much sold on Tom Cruise does crazy stunt and it's actually him doing it. So I don't really know how that works without Tom Cruise. What would be interesting if they want to make more Mission Impossible was maybe going back more to the roots of the 60s show, do a TV show that's a bit more serious spying, more espionage and trickery and deception, less, dangling off skyscrapers. That would be at least different and an interesting thing to do. I mean, it's what I would do if I was in charge, but I'm famously not in charge of these things.
Yeah, sadly, I suspect that may not be the route that leads to the maximum money, but we'll have to wait and see, I suppose. Okay, and first up today, we have both finally seen Sinners after our false start last time. This is, of course, the new action horror movie with a fringe of crime, maybe, from director Ryan Coogler, best known, I guess, for the Black Panther films from Marvel and the Creed movies. And this is about two twins, Smoke and Stack, the Smokestack twins, who left the area to become big shot gangsters in Chicago and have now come back with some money that it's heavily implied they stole to open up a juke joint in town to try and enrich the community. But of course, some combination of their dark past and the fact that there's a dark force lurking in the area which is drawn to the amazing music of the young musician Sammy, played by Miles Caton, will inevitably mess up their brilliant plan. So we have both seen this widely acclaimed film. There is a big spoiler, I guess, a singular big spoiler towards the middle of the film, which we're probably going to have to spoil in a few minutes, otherwise we're going to struggle to say anything, but we'll see how far we can go. Alistair, what did you think of the film?
So it's interesting that this feels very much as a passion project for Ryan Coogler, who is a great director. Well, it's certainly a kind of one for me. He's done his one for the system with directing these two Black Panther movies, very successful movies, especially the first one. This kind of feels like now he's been kind of given a chance to make something that he wants to make that's not a franchise film. You get the feeling this is a story he really wants to tell, and there's lots of ideas going on in it. Obviously, he's got Michael B. Jordan in the lead role, who has been in pretty much like all of Coogler's films since he got any kind of profile. And I think, overall, it really shows that this is like a well-crafted labor of love in some way, that there's a lot of different elements to it. As you said at the top, it spans like a wide variety of genres, crime, horror, history, music is a big element to it. But it's got real atmosphere to it, and a real strong feeling of it's evoking a period very much and a place. It's also quite long but still very entertaining. So this is really, really strong. I think we've given out quite a few good reviews recently, but this definitely jumped to the top of the list of things I've seen recently that's been very, very good.
Yeah, no, I like this as well. I thought it did a very good job of rooting us in the community and introducing a lot of characters quickly, giving them all fun, memorable quirks. It helps that everyone is played by a very good actor. There's a very, as they say, deep bench of very strong actors all playing small characters here. There's Michael B. Jordan as both the twins, but also Haley Steinfeld, Delroy Lindo, and Wunmi Masaku, yes, who we liked in Lovecraft Country and who is also very good here. Yeah, this is an extremely enjoyable film, and it's one of these ones which would have been extremely enjoyable just as a film about the period and the area, but then is only made more entertaining by the massive audacious twist into supernatural action that it makes about halfway through. And like all good sort of critically acclaimed action films, it manages to both convince us it has bigger things on its mind, but also provides the cathartic violence we all want.
Yeah, it's a film set in the Deep South in the Jim Crow era. It's set in, I think, 1932. So this is, a time where like racial tension was very high and racial violence was very high. But that's very much in the background, I feel, of the film. That's like the setting. Like there are some characters who are like clan members. I guess it really focuses on the character and their story of, the first half of the film is them getting the bits together to open this juke joint, the music, the booze, the food, things like that. And then kind of the whole community around it. And then there's, the supernatural twist for the second half. But the setting is, it's interesting. It's sort of very much there, but it's kind of like fed in very subtly, describing the world. Like one of my favorite bits is they go into town to buy supplies for this bar. There's a shop run by Chinese immigrants in town. And what's really interesting is you see through the use of one of Ryan Coogler's like signature long tracking shots. It's very much a thing that he does quite a bit of. The Asian couple who run this shop, well, two shops, one for the blacks and one for the whites. fortnights. And yeah, this really shows like how segregated the community is, but it's not like a big deal of it isn't made. But through this long tracking shot, one of the Michael B. Jordan brothers, I can't remember if it's Smoke or Stack, he goes into the black shop, wants to speak to the owner's wife about making a sign, and then the daughter is dispatched to the white shop owned by the same family on the other side of the road, and then to bring the mother back. And you kind of see as the camera follows them through this complex web of the world, and just how segregated it is between black and white. But you kind of have to really notice that it was there. It's not kind of pointed to in a big way, but it's kind of weaved into the world, the racism and the racial tensions.
Yeah, and then it goes on to become part of the action later. So again, it's all doing a very good job of sort of grounding you in the community, even if you have no actual idea what's going on. I think that one was Smoke. He's the one who just casually shoots some people in the street, isn't he?
Yeah. That's the thing,
around that time. So yeah, I think that's Smoke, although they do unhelpfully have very similar names.
Yeah, I can kind of see they've got a moniker that's also separate and one thing. Yeah, I mean, they're good names and they're kind of distinctive, and it really conjures an image of someone who's got reputation, things like that. Yeah, they're known, and again, in this small community, they're a known presence. The sort of petty criminals are sort of frightened of them. Yeah, again, especially when he starts just shooting some people in the street who try to rob from him. He's also, on some level, respected by people who have some standing in the community, such as the Annie character played by Wumi Masaka, who's sort of the healer, or the shopkeepers, things like that. They've got standing as well as being these disreputable criminal types.
Yeah, Michael B. Jordan's very good here at both giving them distinct presences as different characters and doing the sort of, just on pure, again, presence and charisma, I guess, having them as these sort of impressive badasses who stand out among the town, having, gone to the city and come back again.
Yeah, and it's done well with the costuming and stuff, which is great throughout the film, but they've got very nicely tailored suits that make them still stand out as wealthier individuals. And also it's done really well through the dialogue. I thought the dialogue felt very authentic, and it wasn't filmy dialogue at all. It seemed like the way people would communicate in a sort of more casual tone, and also weaving in lots of kind of slang and expressions from the time and things like that also built up the characters and helped to create this the sense of time and place that runs through the film.
Yeah, as you say, it's a long film, but it's not one. But I felt, even though I am reliably the one to complain about long films, I didn't really feel the length here. I thought once the intro is over, there's the long sequence in the Duke joint as things go horribly wrong, which is very exciting and well paced and does a good job of sort of establishing the space so that you're very aware of what's happening in it at any given time. And every small movement kind of matters, and it's very well choreographed and it's very aware.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then that kind of obviously feeds into everything that happens after the kind of supernatural elements get introduced, which I feel that we've probably reached the point when they need to be addressed. There's definitely several aspects to the supernatural element. There's certainly two in particular I'd like to talk about. I mean, I listened to the Truth of Movies review of this, and they regarded all of this very much as a spoiler not to be dropped, but I feel like I would like to make some points about some of the things. So is now a good point to drop the spoiler wall?
Yeah, let's do it. I think certainly the basic nature of the supernatural presence or threat or whatever in this film is probably something we're going to have to spoil at this point. So yeah, it's not a massive spoiler for the whole film, but it is introduced halfway through in quite a nice and shocking way. So if you want to go into Sinners totally pure, then run for your life. But yes, the supernatural threat that lands with a bloody thud in the community in the halfway point of the film is in fact vampires. It's a vampire movie. That is probably the big spoiler.
Yeah, exactly. And they're used very, very well. Certainly, it really ups the tension, raises the stakes. See what I did there? And leads to some very violent and bloody action scenes. And also they have one of the ways these vampires work is that they can turn other people into vampires quite quickly. They don't have to do the whole draining your blood and burying you for whatever days. So characters get turned and then they turn on their friends or erstwhile colleagues, which is another interesting element of the story that again adds to the tension and which really ramps up throughout the second half of the film.
Well, once you get to the point where you're playing a game of who's a vampire? Could that person be a vampire? That's a lot of fun. And obviously it gives the actors a chance to mess around a bit and play it a bit ambiguous, and then for the ones who actually are vampires, go full evil.
Yeah. And also they've got vampire associated supernatural abilities like strength and speed and things like that, which obviously makes them also scarier.
Yeah, and although we describe this as a supernatural movie, it's not really a movie that's particularly big on lore. It doesn't really want to tell you at length about what its take on vampires is. There are a couple of things which are sort of neatly dropped in so you know them, but basically it's vampires. Vampires. They burn in the sun, they drink blood, they turn you into a vampire. It's a vampire, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very well done on just playing on your existing knowledge and then just getting on with it. There is very little clumsily dubbed exposition in this film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how it works. And again, that shows Ryan Coogler's skill as a filmmaker, that he's able to quickly move across that sort of stuff. Because yeah, it is a long movie, but where it uses its length is in building up tension or building up character or building up the world it's set in. I think the only aspect that is Coogler's or take on vampires, I suppose, kind of relates to the other supernatural element, which is that music is a big part of this film, specifically the blues, and also the blues element of a sort of storytelling medium and kind of folk memory medium for passing information along and preserving culture. And the vampires obviously seem to be drawn towards great blues music and this kind of music that's great, that's powerful, obviously, through, as you said at the top of the review, this blues guitarist who's the cousin of the Michael B. Jordan characters, who's one of the sort of star attractions of this bar that they open. And there's some other characters who are blues players as well. There's this element of like the power of the blues running through the film, especially, like I say, in the sense of it being a medium of storing cultural knowledge, folk knowledge, and transmitting stories across time.
Well, yeah, there's also the concept that I think the lead vampire in this film, played by Jack O'Connell, is meant to be an Irish guy, and there's a couple of entertainingly big on-the-nose sequences as the local people inside dance to the blues. There's the vampires outside singing and dancing to Irish folk music. It's always good to see, the evil folk in the movie singing the songs I like. Big fan of Rocky Road to Dublin. Good to see it sung here by the bloodthirsty villains.
Yeah. It comes in at one point, yeah. But it also, at the beginning of the film, there's a sort of bit when it talks about that all cultures have these sort of mystical musicians who can use music to forge connections through time and also through storytelling. And it mentions that, they were referred to in sort of pre-Christian Irish culture a certain way. I can't remember the term. Obviously, they talk about pre-West contact with the West African cultures as well. I think they talk about other cultures as well. They actually bring that element into the film with showing that music reaches across time and space, has this kind of magical property to it, which is something I think my favourite part of the film. Probably my favourite scene is, again, it's another of Coogler's long tracking shots. Is when they're performing the blues music in the bar. It shows that time and space is breaking down by bringing in people from, it begins with cultures of the past, again going back to sort of pre-colonial Africa, bringing in sort of people performing more traditional music and song telling. Then it links it up with the future by bringing in people playing electric guitars and things like that, and DJs dropping modern style beats. It also there's several Chinese characters in, so it weaves in characters doing sort of traditional forms of Chinese folk dance. And the point is these characters are not supposed to be literally in the room. They're psychic connections across time that the magic of music is bringing. You can interpret it on many levels. You could interpret it as just a metaphor that's been illustrated visually. You could interpret it as music is literally magic and time's breaking down and they're communing with people from the past and the future. You can interpret it in many other ways, but I think it's one of the most powerful both visual bits of the film and really kind of symbolically powerful as well, and I really enjoyed that bit.
Yeah, no, that's definitely one of the big, audacious bits of filmmaking. It's definitely one of the bits in this film that would not be in any other film. It's very cool. It just keeps going and putting more and more music into it in a way that's quite both eye-opening and impressive at the sheer length of the tracking shot he's managed to do this in.
Yeah. It's well done, yeah. I feel like any other director could have done an entertaining vampire thriller set in the Deep South, sort of Jim Crow era. I mean, lots of directors could have done that and it probably would have been, a very entertaining film based on the script and the cast and things like that. But Ryan Coogler takes it to another level by he's got something to say about the power of music, especially power of music in this culture was very repressive, a dystopian society that is very divided on race and, traps black people in poverty and out of political and social opportunities. It's a dystopian society, but music is kind of a thing that's there providing this colour and, and joy in life. And I feel he's got something to say about this. And also, again, how music resonates across time, again, with these immortal vampires or whatever being drawn towards, again, this great music and these great songs. So, he's definitely he's got something to say that, I think other directors wouldn't have such a bold vision for a genre film, in essence.
Yeah, but I think it's fun that he's decided to make an action vampire movie his vehicle for delivering this point. I think that's entertaining, and clearly he's been rewarded for this commercial forward decision, as this film's done incredibly well and everyone seems happy to turn up and both take in the message and enjoy the violence.
I hope it does well at the awards, at least in terms of production design and music, the sort of choice of music and sound editing and things like that. I guess at this point Coogler is very much, or he appears to be, a auteur working within the system. He's making genre films that can be sold as blockbuster entertainment, but also he is an auteur and he's got a message he wants to say. I mean, it's looping back to, a lot of his films have something to say about, Black America and Black life. I mean, certainly the films that he made before he became a big name were more focused on, like racial violence and racial policing. But obviously, there's clear messages about, Black society, Black culture and race in films like Black Panther, obviously, and Creed, a Rocky film about an overlooked up-and-coming black boxer. So, he's always got something to say very much, but he is working within, the genre-based studio and streaming system that we have. He's a man inside using the system to get his message across through mainstream cinema. And he approached that as a kind of, one for me, one for the system. This is his one for me, where he's making lots of his points quite strongly about music and the South at the time. I guess his next one might be, Black Panther 3, which I suppose would be more of a one for the system. He'll still have his unique visual style to it. But he's working within the system, but still finding a way to express himself as an auteur.
Well, yeah, and again, it's nice that he's been rewarded for it. It's nice that this seems to have paid off. Hopefully this will mean he'll continue to get, the money and space he needs to do his own personal, slightly idiosyncratic projects. I mean, who knows whether he's got the desire to go off down weirder, less straightforward routes in future films. But this one, I think, is a nice sort of combination of, as I say, mainstream and a bit offbeat.
Yeah, very much appeals to my sensibilities of, I like films that have like horror and fantasy elements in them as well. And also films that are about music as well, something that's very important to me. I'm not really a huge expert in the blues, but it successfully sold me on the power and relevance of the blues to this culture. You don't need to know about the blues to kind of really get this film, especially if you appreciate the power of music in general. And also this film has something to say about history and politics of the period and place it's set in, so it's very much ticking my boxes. That it's like lots of things that I like. So good film, Ryan, and Michael and all the rest.
Yeah, no, this was great. I imagine we'll be hearing about it again at the end of the year from us, and then maybe next year at the awards, who knows.
Yeah, but I do recommend go seeing it. If you see one thing we've seen recently, grab this.
And lastly today, it's time to chat about the 4th season of Love, Death and Robots. This is, of course, the sci-fi animated anthology series. Well, used to be sci-fi. I think it's diversified a bit over the years. From Netflix, show run by Deadpool director Tim Miller. And yes, it's another collection of 10 short stories, often adapted from short prose stories, throwing us into a range of weird worlds and strange occurrences. We have both seen all 10 of these episodes. In a bit, we'll probably tell you our favourite ones in the form of a chart countdown. But first, Alistair, what did you think of this season as a whole?
Well, I suppose it's the obvious point about an anthology show is that this was hit and miss, but there were some good ones that I did really enjoy, and there were some ones that, just weren't as good. There was nothing that was, I guess, offensively bad, but inconsistent, I suppose, across. I feel that this show doesn't have a quite as strong overarching tone or style as say Black Mirror does. I mean, you kind of know a Black Mirror episode to the point that Black Mirror's style is so well known that they can like subvert it by like having a happy ending or doing a straight up fantasy. This one I feel is like it is just a very loose collection of shows. Some of them are about robots, some of them are about aliens, some of them are just kind of about vaguely SFF related concepts. But I suppose there's sort of a dark tone running through them, but then some of them are just kind of clearly quite silly. So that's my overall thing is that I mean, I enjoyed it certainly, and it's always good to see short films getting some attention because it is a small world of short films. But this had its moments but also had its drawbacks.
Yeah, I think I'm similar, maybe slightly more negative. I thought some of this was alright. I think past seasons have usually had at least 1 or 2 episodes where I've been like, oh wow, that was really good, which I think has somewhat lifted my view of the whole thing, whereas this one I think there were a few that were quite enjoyable and then lots of ones that were just okay or worse. I didn't hate every minute I spent watching it, but I was at no point was I blown away. Except by the animation, to be fair. There's some gorgeous animation as ever. They have at least, spent some Netflix money giving some interesting animators cash to do some good work. And a lot of these episodes do look stunning, but sadly I remain a boringly writing-orientated critic, and as stories, they did feel like they never quite transcended, as we love to say, or even went from decent to really good, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I guess unlike Black Mirror, they don't have much time to tell a decent length story. And some of them felt more like fragments or scenes from a larger story. I mean, sometimes that worked well. You can like tell a whole story in one scene or something like that. But sometimes it just felt like that was just a piece of something. I kind of wanted more. I also felt that like overall this season, well, one of my views is that my overall impression of it was a bit let down by I felt the first 3 weren't very good. It's not really like great when you watch the first one and it's like, didn't really like that. And then you watch the second one and like it'd be like, and the third one and have the same sort of response. But then again, some of my favourite ones were later in the, it did pick up, I felt, as it went along. There are also some that are fairly generic, spacey, adventure-y ones that are kind of entertaining when you watch them, but don't really leave much of an impression. I can name some specifics, but maybe it's best to stick to generalities for now.
Yeah, we'll get to it. Yeah, I mean, the first one, as I sort of implied earlier when I said it's kind of 10, kind of 9 short stories. The first one, Can't Stop, is basically a Red Hot Chili Peppers music video done with animated puppets. And as ever, animation, very cool. As a story, well, it's not a story.
Yeah, it was about 6 minutes long. It doesn't really do anything other than after you've sat through about a minute to 2 minutes of Red Hot Chili Peppers playing live a song from 20 years ago, you kind of feel this really doesn't have much going for it as well. It's just that song is that song Can't Stop that I've heard to death. And yeah, there's no real take on it other than the initial take of like, and it's puppets performing at this time. That's a disappointing start. Then the second one, Close Encounters of the Mini Kind, picking up from, there was a zombie one in the last season, which again was this sort of like made of sort of like, model railway scale figures, really, very small. There was a zombie one in the last one, and this one there was like an alien invasion one. I mean, there's just not really much to it, is there? It's just a brief silly story about aliens wiping out Earth.
I thought that one had its charm. I did laugh. I did enjoy the silly, squeaky little people. It's not much of a story, but I was entertained. It was quite short.
Yeah. Also, this one was quite short, yeah. And yeah, then it leads... I'm not going to go through the whole thing in this order, but then just to complete my point about the first three being a bit disappointing, I felt the third one, Spider Rose, was just a quite generic space adventure. They're in a spaceship and they're trying to kill someone who's bad for revenge or something like that. Yeah, I just felt it was just very generic sort of space sci-fi adventure. Pretty much most of the ones that aimed at photorealistic 3D animation were also kind of quite straightforwardly dull.
Yeah, a lot of the interesting stuff for me was some of the other animation styles. Although, I mean, again, sort of vaguely circling around, getting into specific episodes. But yeah, seeing the animation styles was probably the main appeal to me of a lot of these. It's hard about getting into specifics. Shall we get into some specifics?
Yeah. I mean, do you want to do our countdown, or should we just talk about specific episodes before we do the countdown?
I mean, to talk about some episodes I'm not planning on mentioning anywhere, 400 Boys was an annoying one for me because I really liked the animation style because it's quite comicsy, I suspect, but found the story kind of felt a bit incomplete. It's annoying because I really did enjoy the aesthetic.
Yeah, I thought that one was very beautifully animated. Yeah, and that one had the strongest sense of identity. The Screaming of the Tyrannosaur was another one that aimed at photorealism to at least some degree and was just basically a kind of generic chase thing. I mean, it was probably slightly better than the Spider Rose one in that it kind of had this cool thing of people riding Triceratops in a sort of space station type thing orbiting Jupiter for the delectation of space rich people, and then someone had to fight a T-Rex, and obviously it all backfires in the end and the horrible space rich people get munched. Spoilers, I guess, for that. But yeah, but it was still, I don't know, a fairly generic space adventure story with a little bit more pizzazz. Also, bizarrely, cameo from Mr. Beast, that YouTuber.
Always good to see him. Yeah, no, I didn't like that one either. In fact, to be honest, that might have been my worst, personally, other than the Red Hot Chili Peppers one. I didn't mind, I don't know, I think Spider Rose was definitely a bit generic visually, but I thought the kick at the end was kind of fun. But yeah, Screaming of the Tyrannosaur didn't do much for me at all.
Some of the other ones have all got something interesting about them, which is quite good. How Zek Got Religion is, got a really beautiful animated style and some decent sort of biblical horror stuff. I don't think it's got anything... Well, it's got a lot of death in it, but it's not really anything to do with robots or sci-fi. But at least one had a pretty good visual style with a sort of very creepy demon-type creature.
Yeah, again, that was another one that looked nice visually. And to be fair, it did actually hold together as a story. That's one of the best ones for me.
Yeah.
One of the troubles of talking food like this is, but if we're still going to do the charts and have any kind of drama, then we're basically going to spoil what we think.
Right, shall we do the chart in that case?
Okay.
Right.
So I have already said what my worst one was, which was the Screaming of the Tyrannosaur. Was yours Spider Rose, if we ignore the Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Yeah, I'm ignoring the Red Hot Chili Peppers one. But yeah, Spider Rose for just being a bit of a generic sci-fi story. Yeah, again, I could have put either of the two that are aimed at photorealism. As you say, the end, not without its charm, but overall fairly generic story. But anyway, those are the ones that disappointed. Right, so shall I go first, counting down our top three, I think, and then arrive at some kind of MFV consensus as we normally do with these sort of shows?
Yeah, sure.
Right, in position number 3, I went for Smart Appliances, Stupid Owners, because it just really did make me laugh quite a lot. This is a sort of documentary style type thing, similar to Creature Comforts, but rather than it being farm animals being interviewed, it's your home appliance has been interviewed about you. and obviously all the ridiculous things people get up to. And it's a classic, like, yeah, if your devices could talk, what would they say? Including everything from, like, yeah, smart toilets, vibrators, smart thermostats, smart kitty litter boxes. It's just funny. Made me laugh.
Yeah, no, I had that as a sort of fourth place honourable mentions because yes, I did get a few chuckles out of that. Some of the jokes were quite obvious, but some of them were just quite funny or just quite smutty in an entertaining way. Yeah, no, I enjoyed that one. But yeah, my actual number 3 was another actually related to life around the house. It's The Other Large Thing, which is about a cat and a robot teaming up to take over the household. It's fairly sort of silly and whimsical, but I enjoyed the animation style. I thought it was a fun story, straightforwardly realised, and it had some good little bits and jokes in it. I quite enjoyed the touch where the humans speak in weird gibber. Yeah, no, I enjoyed that one.
Yeah, that was, again, one I might have had as my fourth honourable mention. I did like the story. It was funny. It was a good self-contained story. Yeah, the kind of ridiculous cat tyrant was quite good as a villain. Yeah, it's just a kind of, yeah, again, silly little self-contained story, but yeah, worked well on that basis. You don't really need any more from it. So yeah, I did enjoy that. Just narrowly missed out on the top 3. It was basically, I wanted to put in one funny one. It was either going to be that or the smart appliances one. It just came down to smart appliances at the end. But for my number 2, so moving up the chart, continuing the theme of cats, it's For He Can Creep. One about, yeah, cats battling Satan over the soul of a poet in a sort of medieval style world. I really like this one. Great story, beautifully animated, and they gave the cats real personality. I like this one. I like this one a lot. So yeah, it snuck into number 2.
Yeah, no, I really like this one as well. I'm always up for a good deal with the devil, Satan, death fantasy story, and this is a very good one. It's very charming. The animation looks gorgeous. There's a lot of fun touches throughout. There's a sort of cat posse who are introduced to all have like fun, distinct personalities, even though it's only like a 12-minute short story. Yeah, no, I thought this was great.
It's good. Yeah. No. It's a good little one. Last one as well, so it's good to end on a high.
Yeah. And number 2, also mentioned earlier, not in the charts though, it's How Zeke Got Religion, in which yet another demon is summoned. They're really going away from robots and towards demons in this series. And this time it's on a wartime fighter. And yeah, it's just another good, slightly comicsy action sequence. Lots of nice, fun, grisly beats, lots of messy deaths, a nice actual climax at the end. Good, fun, tense stuff.
Yeah, I like this one a lot as well, yeah. I thought the animation was beautiful, as I said before, especially of the demon, like how it has sort of like all these arms sort of reaching out and this mechanical face type thing. It was, yeah, they successfully got across demon as being something very alien and dangerous and violent and weird. So yeah, that was very good.
Yeah, no, it did a good job of never actually showing the true nature of the demon in a way that made it seem very weird and otherworldly. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and a great little story set, in World War II. Good evocation of World War II bombers as well. Weaving in lots of, a lot going on in quite a short space of time. That's one of the strong things about that. Good animation, good stories, gets the characters across quite nicely and quickly.
Yeah.
Good bit of filmmaking there.
Right.
Yeah, my number 1. It's already been mentioned. It was The 400 Boys, mainly on the strength of the animation. I just thought that it was absolutely gorgeous. Really evoked this post-apocalyptic world. Beautiful landscape. Also, the music was great as well. The kind of big battle at the end had a great soundtrack to it as well. Really created a sense of atmosphere. Yeah, I like how sort of stylized and abstract the animation was. Some very distinct characters done quickly. Yeah, I get your point. I mean, none of them were like wow, like in the previous seasons. I accept your criticisms of it, but I think on the animation style alone, this one came top for me.
Yeah. No, I wrote it off down a few places on the writing front, but I do think that this was some of the best animation in the entire series. It's definitely deserving of recognition. It looks amazing.
And finally, your top position.
And finally, we've already mentioned it. In fact, we've already discussed it in this chart not that long ago. It's For He Can Creep, the Cat Satan one. I really liked that.
Yeah, I thought it was great, yeah. Really great little story. To be honest, it was really hard to choose between this and 400 Boys for number 1. They were the two that really spoke to me. So yeah, it was hard to choose which one I wanted as number 1. So it was a very narrow thing.
Yeah, I don't know what's made them turn to talking cats in this season, but with strong results.
Yeah. No, great little story. Yeah, really well animated. Some beautiful animation, especially showing some of the more sort of cosmic, mythological scenes, well realised, which can be hard to do properly. Right, so I don't know, we're going to arrive at consensus. I'm happy to say For He Can Creep is the MFV favourite, as it was nearly my number 1 and it was your number 1.
Yeah, that's definitely the consensus number 1. If we're going on pure chart position, does that mean number 2 and 3 are probably Smart Appliances and The Other Large Thing?
I guess so, yeah. So good run for cats and home appliances.
Yeah, no, it's very thematically consistent top 3. And for the records, it is literally the only one we haven't said anything about. Yeah. Golgotha. I thought that was fun but weird, and again didn't really have an ending.
It was the first, I think, actual live action one they've done, although one of the main characters is a CGI alien. But I did like what's his name from Flight of the Conchords.
Rhys Darby.
Rhys Darby, God, I keep forgetting, who we liked in both that and Our Flag Means Death. He is very funny. He was good in this, yeah. It was more of just a scene, I felt. Again, fragments of a story. If it had been a complete story, it might have made it into my top 3, because it was a kind of good fragment, but it was, I don't know, it was like being given a small amount of a meal. You kind of want more.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. But yeah, it was nice spending some time with Rhys Darby. He is very, very funny. I liked it just for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you say, it didn't really feel like it really felt complete.
Yeah.
So yeah, there we go. And yeah, there we are. Love, Death and Robots Season 4. It was fine.
It was fine, yeah. Maybe don't rush out and see this one. That's all we have time for. If you have enjoyed this episode of Moderate Fantasy Violence, then please subscribe in your podcatcher of choice. Whilst you're there, please leave us a review. You can also find more episodes of the podcast and written pieces, such as the Mission Impossible long read that I alluded to earlier, on our website, which is moderatefantasyviolence.com.
And you could also follow us on the social medias, where we are on Twitter, we're on Blue Sky, I think we're still on Facebook as well. And yes, you can also follow me personally at nickbryan.com on the wider internet, nickbryan.com with a dot on Blue Sky, and nickbryan.com with the word dot on Instagram. And you can also, if you want, back my current comics Kickstarter for issue 2 of my series Sold. That's Sold spelt in the normal natural way, S-O-U-L-D. And yes, I think when I say you could back it, it'll be live for probably about 24 hours, maybe about 28 hours after this episode airs. So you can back it as long as you've listened to this podcast basically on release day or the next morning. Good luck.
I can recommend this comic. I really enjoyed Sold Issue 1. I've backed Sold Issue 2 and I'm excited to see where the story goes. So yeah, this comes with a full MFV recommend.
Another consensus.
Yes, consensus is what we strive for. And after you've backed Nick's Kickstarter, you can find out more from me by searching for Alistair Ball on Instagram, TikTok or Blue Sky. You can also find my writing at redtrainblog.com or find my theatre reviews at everythingtheatre.com. And on top of all that, you can join us here next time, where we will be having more adventures in time and space with the new season of Doctor Who and organising a rebellion against a galactic empire in the second season of Andor. Join us in 2 weeks for that. Until then, goodbye.
Bye.